The Lead. Sponsored by Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC. Well, welcome to another episode of The Lead. I'm your co-host, Al Blanton, alongside my co-host, Greg Tinker. And we hope you've been enjoying the show over the last few weeks as we interview local sports personalities. You know, today we wanted to do something a little bit different. We wanted to hit the pause button. And Greg, as you'll recall, in our first episode of The Lead, you decided that you wanted to interview me about my athletic career and sort of the generational legacy of my family in the local sports community. And so today the tables are turned, and we've decided to interview you about your athletic career. And just wanted to see how that sounded before we got started. And
well, I don't know. Career, I think I've had one. How athletic it's been, I'm not sure, but I have been involved in athletics.
Yeah.
So I have had a career of being involved in athletics. Yeah. That's right.
Well, as we start, let's go all the way back to 1986. You're a recent graduate of Trevecca Nazarene in Nashville, and you got a job at Maddox Middle School in Jasper. How did that come about?
Yeah, I wish we had time for me to tell the whole story because it's miraculous how I ended up with that job. A total God thing because it was not a job that I knew existed. And I was actually getting ready to head back to Trevecca to start work on a master's degree, and I got a call from the city school system. And they said, hey, we've got a job opening as 8th grade history teacher and basketball coach, which is what I wanted to do. And having been a Curry grad, I had not imagined myself working in the city school system. But I came and interviewed with Mr. Woods and Mr. Hensley, and they offered me the job that afternoon. Came that morning and interviewed. They offered me the job that afternoon. And as they say, the rest is history. I began that job. And so for 3 decades, other than the brief interruption of doing youth ministry, had that job in the city school system. Started out as an 8th grade boys, 7th and 8th grade boys basketball coach. And then during my career had other coaching opportunities, but that's what I began in the system with.
And you grew up playing sports all through your youth. And who were some of the people that kind of shaped your coaching philosophy through the years up until that point when you got to Maddox?
Yeah, so was involved in city baseball here back in the day at Fowler Field. And so got started playing youth league baseball. Didn't know much about basketball because my family was mostly baseball oriented. Loved baseball. Then when I got to junior high, started playing basketball and enjoyed that very much. And
this was at Red Mill?
Red Mill, yeah. At that incredible place to grow up and be a part of, you know, in a gymnasium built during the Depression era where when you threw the ball in, you had to put your foot on the wall because there was no out of bounds. The wall was out of bounds, so you put your foot against the wall to throw the ball in. And the back court line was the opposite free throw line.
Yeah. So it wasn't Rupp Arena that we were dealing with here by any means.
No, not quite Rupp Arena.
Yeah.
It was packed like Rupp Arena would be, but you know, with 200 rather than 20,000.
Sure.
Yeah. And Leo Guthrie was my first exposure to basketball, and he was a great man in general and good to learn from. But then Larry Banks came along. And really he set the course for my coaching career, just the way he did things in terms of discipline and excellence and knowledge of the game. And so he really helped me there. In summer league baseball, I had good coaches here in town as well. And then I got to high school, and Kurt Miller was my basketball coach there. Learned a lot from Coach Miller and appreciated him so much, again, for the kind of work ethic that he taught and the effort that we put in to be as good as we could be. And my baseball coach, Phil Wilson at Curry. So those guys helped shape my career, and I'm so thankful that I was able to be a part of athletics at Red Mill and then at Curry.
Let's go back to that first year at Maddox. What do you remember about that year, and who were some of the kids that you coached in that very first year?
Yeah, I was very blessed. First of all, let me say something about Phil Schumacher. Coach Schumacher was the coach at Walker at that time, and he took me under wing and really helped me a great deal. He attended the ball games. He's busy with his own team and things to do, but he took the time out to come watch us play. And then after we would play a game, he would talk with me about things that he observed that would help me. He took me to coaches' clinics, that kind of thing. So I am really indebted to Phil Schumacher for the investment that he made in me as a young coach. And so that first year, his help was indispensable. And I had a really great group of athletes, interestingly. The head coach, who's now at I almost said Walker, but at Jasper High School, is Heath Burns. Heath was a point guard on my very first team, and quite a good ball player, and was surrounded by other really good athletes as well. Chad Key being one of those, who went on to the University of Alabama, won a national championship there. Ken Key was part of that team. Jerome Pugh was part of that team. John Westbrook, Jay Kirkpatrick. It was a great group of kids to have as my first year as a coach there. They were 8th graders. We went 16-3 that year. We won the county tournament. So it was a really good start for me to have a group of kids who were willing to work hard. They loved each other. And so it was a real cohesive unit. And because of that, we were able to have a lot of success. And most of those guys have gone on and had really successful careers as adults. So Reggie Hollis was a part of that as well. Reggie was a starter on the team. So it was a blessing to start with them and to have that kind of success starting out.
You know, anybody that's come under your tutelage knows that you stress fundamentals. You know, I can still remember and still hear, you know, when we're talking about a chest pass, it's arms extended, thumbs down.
Yeah.
Why was it important for you to emphasize the fundamentals, and how does that sort of bleed over into life?
Yeah. Well, I had learned that growing up of doing little things well my own self, and that was because of the influence of coaches, but also just things I'd picked up on my own. I loved watching sports on TV, and this is back in the day before cable, when Saturday baseball came on, and sometimes there would be a doubleheader, and that was a delightful day when there was a doubleheader on Saturday. And, you had Kurt Gowdy doing baseball on Saturday. And so I would put myself in front of the TV and watch and listen and try to learn. And then when basketball rolled around, I was a big college basketball fan in that day. And again, limited number of games. So you watch and you learn. And that's back when Carolina with Dean Smith was a big deal, and Indiana with Bobby Knight. And those guys were great teachers, fundamentally. And so that became important to me. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really set that in stone for me is we go to a coach's clinic. Coach Schumacher had taken me to a coach's clinic in Birmingham, and the speaker is Dale Brown. He was at LSU at the time and having a lot of success. But he said when he first began, UCLA was in one of their Final Fours, and it was actually the championship game. So they're having the practice on the Sunday before the championship game on Monday. And so he managed to get into the arena. It was closed to the public, but he managed to get into the arena, and there's no fans in the stand. Now they let people come in and watch practices. So the arena's empty. But he said he walked down one of the portals, and he's standing there, kind of so nobody can see him. And Coach Wooden is down there on the floor with Sidney Wicks, who's an All-American, going to be an NBA player. So here they are the day before the national championship game. Coach Wooden with an All-American, Sidney Wicks. And you know what he's saying to Sidney Wicks?
Working on fundamentals.
Arms extended, thumbs down.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me, that it doesn't matter what level you get to, you can't get away from fundamentals. Yeah. So being a middle school coach most of my career, and that's kind of where I landed and where I stayed by choice. I did do some varsity coaching, but when I had the opportunity, when I was away from school for a while doing youth ministry, and I came back, I had a choice to go to the high school or to the middle school. And I chose to come back to the middle school because I believed that if I could teach young men and eventually young women, when I started coaching girls basketball, how to do things right to begin with, that the next coach would have it easier. In other words, They already know how to do those things well in terms of fundamentals. And so then the coach at the varsity level just has to teach them, whatever system they're going to play in. And so I learned pretty early on to emphasize that, and I took great pride in that the people I coach would know how to do those things and do them really well. And then secondly, what that does is it carries over to life, of course, because you learn to do whatever it is you're doing well. And if you do that in your personal life, you have better success, whether it's, being an employee, or once you're married, being a husband, or when you become a father, being a father. So it's one of those things, hard work, discipline, paying attention to detail carries over into every aspect of life.
A couple of the games that really stand out to me, of course, I played for you in 7th and 8th grade at Maddox, but two of the games that really stick out to me were the annual contest against Sipsey. I remember the bus ride going down to Sipsey and how nervous we would be, in those games, but also the Central Tuscaloosa game in 8th grade. Final score didn't quite come out in our favor.
No.
What do you remember about that game?
Oh my! Well, the Central Tuscaloosa coach, Coach Harris, met me before the game. He said, "Now, Coach, I don't know if we're going to be very competitive today." He said some of our kids had something to do, band practice or whatever, band concert. So I'm thinking, maybe we've got a shot, because at that time they were still feeding into Central High School, which was the biggest high school in the state at that time, about 3,200 students.
Yeah, and had won a couple state championships.
Oh, yeah.
Would later win state championships with those same teams.
Oh, absolutely. And so they get off the bus, and if I remember correctly, Al, had 6 players. So I'm thinking, well, we got a little bit more of a shot because, you guys worked hard and we had some talent, but we didn't have the kind of talent that they had. And so those 6 guys come in and they start warming up, and I think 5 out of the 6 had their hand over the rim where they're warming up, and I'm thinking, this may not go as well as I thought it might. So I don't know if it ended up like 66-6 or something like that.
60-15. And
60-15. I knew it was bad.
And we had a dance later that night, so that sort of put a little bit of a damper on the evening festivities. But you also had the opportunity, as you mentioned, to coach baseball at the high school level. What are some of your fondest memories about that experience as well?
Yeah, it was a great experience for me. A lot of wonderful guys, and more than winning or losing, I was very, very proud of the fact that, and if I hope I have this number. It's been a long time since I've thought about the exact number, but I was JV coach for 3 years, and then 5 years the varsity coach in the 90s, and we sent, during those 8 years of my coaching at the high school, 52 different players to the next level if they wanted to go, and many of them did. At least 52 had an opportunity. So I look back on that and I think, coming through our program, because of the area that we were in 6A, it was just tough on us to win in baseball, because Central Tuscaloosa and Hueytown and Tuscaloosa County was a power at that time. So it was tough. We did eventually move down to 5A and had more success. But the thing that I remember most is that we gave a lot of guys an opportunity to play at the next level. And we had some that did play Division I baseball. Ken Key ended up playing at Auburn, starting center fielder, played in the World Series, ended up playing a little pro ball at the lowest level. And several other guys who went on to have a lot of success in college. But I do remember, and this is a game that I've recounted to different people, we were in 5A, Gardendale was in our region. Gardendale had 2 guys that were D1 guys. They ended up pitching, one at Alabama, B.J. Green was the best, and he ended up pitching at Alabama. They also had a guy that pitched at UAB. So here are these 2 D1 guys on the mound. We go to Gardendale. This is going to determine who the winner of the area is. And in that particular game, we scored a run in the top of the second. They scored a run in the bottom of the second. We remained tied 1-1 until the 15th inning.
Wow.
So we started at 4 o'clock. The game ended at 9:30. We played 15 innings. So in the top of the 15th, Brian Alexander hit a 2-run homer. And I could still remember the sight of that ball going out, into the darkness in right field. It was such a beautiful sight. And so we'd go up 3-1. Well, we had pitchers who worked really hard, but, they weren't D1 guys. They were just guys who got on the mound and gave it all that they had, Garland Smith and Chad Lee. And so we get into the bottom of the 15th, and they load the bases with one out. And there's a ball hit to center field, to shallow center field. They've scored one run already to make it 3-2, so this is, maybe going to tie the game. And we catch the ball in center field, and the guy tags, and we throw him out at the plate for the last out in a dramatic kind of ending to the game. So I think about that a lot, that 3-2 game that then got us into the playoffs. We won the first round, and then Hartzell came to Jasper, and we had them on the ropes until late in the game, and had a couple of walks and a hit batsman and so forth. And next thing you know, we get behind and we're not able to come back and win that game. And that was back in the day where you're one and done. So that group, and interestingly, the catcher on that group is the coach at Jasper High School, Pat Ware, and Pat was the field general because he was the catcher. And I had so much faith in him, I allowed him to call the pitches, and he did an outstanding job with that. And of course, he's been at Jasper now for a long time. So again, those players having success, and many of that group went on to have success and are continuing to do that.
I'm sure it really delights you for your players to go on and coach and kind of follow in your footsteps. And
well, yeah, and just like your case, you started out at the high school level, and you ended up, all of us are very proud of the fact that you came back and coached at, I just have to call it Walker College, okay? I know it's Bevel State, but you came back to coach at Walker College, and I was thrilled to be a part of that, with you in doing some devotional type things for the team, but just so proud of you being able to come back in the job that you did while you were here. So yeah, absolutely. Seeing guys go different places and coach and be involved in athletics, whatever that might look like.
yeah, let's go back, and we're running out of time, but I've got a few more questions. Let's go back to Brewer State, circa 1983.
Right.
There was a epiphany that you had on campus that sort of changed the course of your life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, just ending up there at Brewer State was a thing of God, because they started a team that year, and I had to go over and try out. And I made the first cut, and I had a second tryout, and I made the second cut. And so made the team, and finally was awarded a scholarship to be on the team, on the inaugural team at Brewer State in 1982 and 83, and in 83 and 84. And so it was walking across the campus that I had this revelation from the Holy Spirit that I should change my major to education and become a teacher and a coach. And so I immediately went to my advisor and changed my major from pre-law to education to history, and finished up there at Brewer State and then on to Trevecca, and had some success at Trevecca academically. I didn't play ball there because the scholarship money was so little, and the cost of college was much greater than the scholarship offer. So I decided to go to work and did that, but had some academic success there, and that enabled me then to graduate with honors, which I was pleased with, and then to move on here and get the job in Jasper. And that all fits together, and maybe at a later date we can talk about that, the whole aspect of that, how that all came together. But it really started with my coach at Curry, Coach Wilson, handing me a letter and saying, hey, you may be interested in this. And it was an invitation to the tryout at Brewer, which I knew nothing about till he handed me the letter, and that set everything in motion.
A couple of years ago, you were honored with a standing ovation at the Jasper High School game for your service to the football team and to the community. What did that moment mean to you?
Oh my goodness. It was such a shock. I have always kind of done what I do. I don't look for any kind of praise or accolades or anything else. I believe as followers of Christ, we're to serve, and we do that, if you will, kind of under the radar. So it's never been about any return. that has happened across the years, and I'm appreciative of that. But I've just always tried to invest and give my best so that those around me hopefully will benefit from that, and their lives can be enhanced, and they can have the opportunity, whatever that looks like, for their lives to be as good as they can be. And that night, we're up in the booth, and it's the end of the third quarter, and things are going along, and Mitchell starts pointing at me, to take my headphones off, and I'm like, wow, I don't what, because I'm still talking about the game, and he kept pointing at me. He said, "You got to take," and so I take my headphones off, and I look at him, and I said, "Well, what for?" I mean, and then he starts pointing outside, and it's like I start listening, and I hear what I think Jonathan Jordan is saying, or whoever's reading that night, and I mean, just so humbling.
Yeah.
To look out there and see the number of people whose lives I've been honored to be a part of on some level through teaching or coaching directly, or maybe it was their child or grandchild that I taught. And for them to stand and to recognize that was just unbelievable. And I am eternally grateful for that moment, for sure.
Yeah. This was not something that I had on my question sheet here, but it's something that I wanted to say as sort of a testament to your character, and hopefully you'll take this the right way. But if you go back to my ninth grade year, I tried out for the baseball team, and you cut me, and I can imagine how difficult that was, especially with the kind of father that I had. And you and my dad, of course, were very good friends.
Yeah.
But you did the right thing. I didn't have a good tryout. I was kind of in a bad stage of my baseball playing career, and you ended up cutting me, and I bet that was extremely difficult to have to do that, and then also have to deal with the ire of Big Al.
Sure.
So but as I look back at that, and as we've continued to have our friendship over the years, and that's developed, I've got a great respect for you because of that, because you had this tremendous pressure not to do that and just let me on the team, but you didn't do it. So tell me a little bit about that and your perception of that, that exchange.
Yeah. There's nothing more difficult, and you know this from coaching, nothing more difficult than having to make a decision where you tell a young man or a young lady you didn't make the cut. I've been on the receiving end of that, so I knew what it felt like, because I had been there. I had been cut for an all-star team one year, didn't make it, and I was crushed by that. So I knew what that felt like. But as a coach, there's only so many positions available on a team, whether it's baseball or basketball, whichever, and that's excruciating. Not a lot of people know, unless they've had to do it, the agony that is involved in having to make those decisions, and to tell a young man or young lady who have their hopes pinned on making a team that you're not going to make the team, and to deal with sometimes the fallout of that.
Back then, it mattered probably a lot more than it does now.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Because there weren't the vast number of things to do then that there are now, and then of course dealing with the fallout in terms of how does that affect the person. How are they going to receive that, and how's your relationship going to be with that person? And then the parents in some cases, and
the fallout of Big Al, that's what I was laughing about.
And no doubt we had, your dad. So we had lots and lots and lots of discussions, phone calls, and he let me know quite often how wrong I was, and many, many other things. And it did harm our relationship for a period of time, he and I. And I regretted that, because he was invested in you always having the best and what you wanted, and as any parent would. And so I understood it from that aspect, and thankfully our relationship got repaired as the years went by, and we continued to be great friends. But yeah, that's a difficult thing. But if you're gonna have integrity, and if you're gonna do what's right by everybody, you have to make those decisions sometimes. And I did. And you have to live with them. But it is it was and is, for those now who are coaching, it's a tough thing to do.
Well, and Satan can get in the middle of all that, and want to create bitterness and pull relationships apart. So, it's been a blessing for us for that not to have to happen in our relationship. And so, I've been obviously very appreciative of your influence over the years, and glad that we didn't let that sever us, and here we are. So,
well, one of the things, and this is, you wouldn't maybe say this, but you were 2 years behind everybody else developmentally because of how you went from first grade to fourth grade in your first grade year. Mm-hmm. And so,
quadruple promoted, as Big Al would have said. Yes.
Correct. Have you met my genius son? And so, yes, I have. So you were 13 trying out with
12. No, I was 12. Yeah,
trying out with 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds, right? And so
some of them were 15 or 16.
They were. Yeah. And so you're talking about that kind of the fact that you could even be there and be competitive was miraculous in and of itself, because physically maturing and mentally and emotionally maturing
in particular,
so the fact that you even were able to try out and have an opportunity was pretty miraculous, because you were so far behind just because of that move early in your life.
Yeah, well, we could go on all day with this. I mean, this interview could last 2 hours easily. But in the final analysis, what do you want people to remember about you?
Yeah, well, I hope that that what people would remember about me is that I have always left things better than I found them, and that I've cared about excellence. I've cared about treating people the way I would like to be treated. Sometimes that could have been misunderstood in circumstances like that, but I've always wanted the best for the people that I've been around. I used to say to my students that, because of a teacher's pay, I realize I'm not ever going to make a lot of money. That's just not part of what you do if you go into education. So I made that choice, and I was willing to live with that. But the blessing of that was being able to invest in the lives of young people and watch them develop. So I would say to them, like I would to you, that your success is my pay. And so watching you do what you've done in town with this and with other things, with 78 Magazine, and how you have enhanced our community literally by producing quality products that highlights the good things about what are going on here, because we get so much bad publicity. To have somebody come and invest in our community that lifts everybody up. And so to watch you and to watch others, as I mentioned, Heath Burns and Pat Ware and so many others that are part of our community that are helping things to be better. So that I have had the opportunity to be involved in the lives of literally thousands of young people, and then their families, and then through ministry and other things, that I can take some sense of satisfaction, at least a little bit, that maybe I had a small part to play in their development, their direction in life, their success, and that they're thriving, and that gives me a sense of accomplishment, if you will. And I don't, I've never had to have any praise about that, if you will, but just the self-satisfaction that somehow or another my investment in their lives through the blessing of teaching and coaching has helped them to live at a little bit higher level.
Well, would you do the honors of signing our poster? I'll get the gray marker ready for you.
I think I can do it.
We've got a star-studded lineup here now on our poster. We'll probably auction that off at some point.
Well, this is going to make it that much more valuable. Yes. I can guarantee you.
Oh, yeah. The value will skyrocket.
And even to this day, Al, I've worn a lot of hats, and now I'm the lead minister at Covenant Nazarene, and which I'm loving. But to still be called coach, to me, is the most wonderful thing, because that's what I wanted to do and be remembered for on some level. And so when I run into somebody, wherever it is, and for them to say, "Hey, Coach Tinker," and I that just really does bless me when somebody recognizes that and refers to me in that way.
It's still hard for me to call you Greg, even though we're colleagues, but you'll always be Coach. So, well, that's all for us today. For Greg Tinker, this is Al Blanton. We'll see you next time on The Lead. The Lead, sponsored by Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC.